morning, everybody. Everyone can hear me. Good morning. Good morning. Excellent to be here. Everybody wide awake? Yay! We'll be starting any moment. As soon as Steve joins me up here. He's just closing the door. Welcome. It's brilliant to see you all this morning. Have you had a lovely day so far? Really, really interesting keynote. And those of us who are in here, really interesting talk from Lisette about managing remote teams. It was excellent, wasn't it? And we're going to be, in this session, we're going to be drilling down a little bit into one specific aspect of managing or working in a remote team. This question of how do you make remote meetings great? I'm Judy, this is Steve, and we haven't got a clicker, so when it's... That's what we're doing, more or less. Hopefully you read that, and then I'm going to hand over to Steve to pick up the next bit.
Okay. Thanks, Judy. Here's a question. What are some of the problems? Who's had a really low quality remote meeting? Okay, I guess we kind of selected you in here, didn't we? So Lisette's going to work with us here. I would really like to know what are some of the problems you've had with your remote meetings. We've got a microphone here. Let's hear some headlines and maybe the odd story. Who's got something for us? Thank you.
If you have a complicated problem to solve, there's a lot of people online, but you hardly hear what they are saying.
Sorry?
So you hardly hear what they are saying. Sorry.
Thank you. A lot of people online, and you hardly hear what they're saying, so that's a hearing it piece. Thank you.
Yeah, audio quality is often a problem, and the latency before you say something until you get a reply, people start chatting in the mouth of each other, and just becomes difficult.
Audio becomes difficult. Thank you. I won't repeat that joke. Sir.
So there's a big issue when there are two conference rooms, and in the one there are more people. So when they start talking between themselves, and you're out part of the small room, let's say, it's really hard to actually participate.
Okay, so there's a group of people chatting, and you're remote, and is that?
Yeah, so there are two groups, both are remote, but one is bigger.
Yeah.
So they kind of overtake the meeting.
Interaction between the two groups, and if actually you're on your own and they're all together, that's another nightmare, isn't it?
That's even harder. Yeah.
Super hard. And then you've got that. People have made a lot of money selling these little spider phones in the middle of a table, and everybody talks around them, and they're just. Anyway, we've got some ideas to do that. I was once having quite a difficult conversation with somebody, and it was on speakerphone, and the phone was here, and I was here, and he said, "It sounds like you're speaking down to me." I am. What else? Anything else? Couple at the back there, and then I've got a very short one about Bren, and then.
When you're in a meeting and you have a meeting with someone on a laptop, and there's have a really bad posture, and you can only see their forehead, but you don't know them well enough to tell them, "I can only see your forehead."
So you can just see their forehead, but you don't know them well enough. So again, a communication and visual piece. And sometimes the hearing thing. I work with a colleague, a dear friend, Bren, who, you ever had the "I forgot to mute" moment? I mean, and he, team meeting, Bren goes to the loo, goes to the toilet, and, the god of thunder was there. He forgot. that was funny. All kinds of problems. Sorry, I can't quite see. One more. Yeah. I beg your pardon.
I had a similar problem when we have two teams trying to communicate, and then they want to brainstorm, and the audio just cuts out everything because it thinks it's background sound, so everyone is muted. There's no sound, and then in a meeting with the customer, the image started freezing when we were demoing our software. So the image just shopping. So the customer got really confused. It was like seeing a slideshow where the slides were going in one space and the other. That was horrible. But the most horrible experience was when the sound was muted because people were talking at the same time.
Okay, so the visual and the sound. So these are tech problems, but I think also there's the human-to-human problems. There's one guy here.
Yeah, really, the problem is when you are trying to say something that you know the others maybe don't like so much, but you don't know when you're saying them. You're kind of trying to stretch out, what do you think about what I'm saying just now? And I have no idea. That's really hard, I think.
Which is very much part of the human-to-human. So we've got a bunch of problems, including tech, sound, video, and some things that are would be bad for a co-located meeting as well as a remote meeting. But we're going to talk about all of those and more. And here's a question.
Is it actually the medium of a remote meeting that makes remote meetings bad? Or is it actually something about the way we're doing the meetings? Clearly, a lot of the stories you shared here have a technical component, but actually, the fact is that remote meetings don't have to be bad. I've been facilitating online meetings for a long time. Amongst other things, I've been facilitating remote unconferences, open space events. This is one that happened, was it last Saturday or Saturday before? Saturday before last. We spent 5 hours online with people from all over the world. There was one guy joining from a tent in the Australian outback, a digital nomad who basically had set up his car with two antennae to be able to pick up the internet over the satellite. And he just connected at 11 o'clock at night, his time, and stayed online until 4 in the morning because he was enjoying it so much. We had some amazing conversations. We talked about all sorts of things to do with remote facilitation. It was an event around, it was called the Remote Forever Summit. We had some brilliant conversations, we've made new friendships, and we've deepened friendships that were already there. I've done a number of these for different people around the world. They can be brilliant. Similarly, more ordinary meetings. This is a testimonial from a very straightforward, from a facilitation point of view. It's a brainstorm event, a couple of hours with the executive team of a tech startup, fully distributed. Everybody joined from wherever they were, from various places in America, from India, from Europe. And I facilitated them through a series of activities to come up with some awesome ideas in order to hit their very aggressive KPIs in the coming year. I've also done training, including very embodied training. Part of what I do involves physical posture and movement and understanding how that relates to how people think. And I've trained people in doing that kind of training remotely. Some people I've worked with were involved in an event last week called the Embodiment Summit, where they were actually doing an online conference about embodiment. So there were yoga teachers, there were Feldenkrais practitioners, there were Pilates instructors, there were martial arts instructors doing their thing remotely. And by all accounts, it was awesome. So it doesn't have to be awful just because it's remote.
Yeah, thank you. We thought we'd have a look at, as we were preparing this, about, well, actually, what was happening was we were talking about why remote meetings can be great, as Judy has said. There's an insight into how fantastic it can be. And they can be really pants. And we're working this through and it's like, right, people arriving late. There's something behind this I want to talk about. By the way, you've mostly been in really lousy remote meetings. Who's been in a really crap in the room meeting? A lot of the stuff's the same, but there's some things that can be done. So people arriving late. People arrive late to ordinary meetings. They arrive late to remote meetings. And I think it can be a bit more disruptive for the remote meeting. That's my feeling. And I think there's something about a remote meeting that at the moment makes it a bit more likely to happen. Now, I'm going to try, I can't quite see because of the lights, but I'm going to try and get a sense from you. So I think that a remote meeting is really easy to say yes to because, you know, I can be doing other stuff. I can be walking the dog, I can be, you know, whatever, I can be driving. It's pretty easy to say yes to. So it's pretty low status. It can be pretty low status, and that can be an issue that we're going to talk about. Now, what can you do? People arriving late, use the time to build those relationships. One of the problems with remote stuff is people feel less engaged, and we'll talk about that as well. Get to know each other. Lisette spoke about Zoom. We don't get paid by Zoom either. We're working on it, but we don't yet. So it's a great tool. And Skype for Business is crap. You can, you know, the question, I don't know why I'm there at meetings. That can be in the room, it can be remote, yeah? It can be either. So here's an answer. If you don't know why you're there, don't go. That changes things quite a lot, actually, because you are requiring other people to be purposeful about why you're there and requiring yourself to be purposeful while you're there. It works for remote meetings as well as in the room meetings. On remote, it has a bit more impact because all those people who don't know why they're there, but they said yeah because it's easy, they're doing their email. They're distracted, they're doing other stuff. And it becomes crap because it's crap, and it becomes crapper because it's crapper because people aren't paying attention. And that's what we've got to change. And it becomes boring, but we need to harvest this remote harvest, this benefit of, never mind people who would prefer, who are already working in offices but would prefer a bit more time for whatever reason, working from home. 2003, I established probably the oldest humanitarian risk management consultancy in the world. It's still going. I just don't want to run it anymore. But it's always been remote. And we found people to work with us who couldn't otherwise engage because of their family or other considerations. We got a fantastic work resource pool of people who were excluded. So there is that harvest to get, and yet the downside gets in the way. It's crap. The tech. Lisette spoke about the tech. We're not really tech people, we're more human-to-human contact people, but have good tech as a baseline is definitely in there. All of that and all of that leads us on to being present makes a difference.
Yeah, wherever you are in a meeting, the more present you can be, the more you're going to get out of it. One of the speakers at a conference I was at the other week had a really interesting setup for his talk. He said, when I was a lad, I was doing all sorts of interesting research into the mind and how the mind works and relationships and how relationship works. And I found myself that sometimes living on a farm in the middle of Norway, because he happened to be living on a farm in the middle of Norway as a teenager, he said, I used to get bored. But as I went through my research into the mind and relationships, I discovered something important. That boredom says nothing about the thing I'm experiencing. It doesn't say anything about the thing that's in front of me. It's not about the boredom of the farm. It's not about the people I'm talking to. It's not about the meal I'm eating being boring. What boredom tells me about is the quality of my attention. I thought that was very interesting. So if you are bored in a meeting, whether it's a remote meeting or an in-person meeting, consider that feeling of boredom may be saying something about your attention. And there definitely are some actual issues with remote meetings. I know that because during the course of this summer, I did some interesting research. I had a couple of weeks where I was a bit quiet, So I put out on my social media, who do I know who's a brilliant in-the-room facilitator, trainer, meeting organizer, chairman, who thinks it's impossible to do those things remotely? And I got quite a few people come back to me and said, yes, that describes me, or it describes my friend, and I'll put you in touch with my friend. So I ended up doing some interviews with several people who thought that good remote meetings, good remote trainings, good remote facilitation was absolutely impossible. And these are some of the things they came back to me with. And I interviewed them, detailed interviews, and got really... This slide here is me putting out all the post-it notes of all the various bits that came out of the interviews. And I analysed all of this, and it emerged that there were fundamentally, even after I'd shown them Zoom, and Zoom's amazing feature of breakout groups, and how the leader of the event could go into the breakout groups and chat to the people there, and how you could also use other tools in parallel, like Mural or Real-Time Board, or this post-it note called, which is this post-it board, which is called Lino, Lino.it. I don't know how to pronounce that. Linoit, I think, but really awesome tools that are out there that can help you as a meeting organizer, facilitator, to make them good online. Even after I'd explained those things and showed those things to these people, there remained 3 major issues which appear to be worse online.
There's one not there. I didn't see. You're going to mention the guy who needed to smell the room. Well, that come later.
Oh, yes. Why don't I just mention the guy who needed to smell the room? Yeah. So fundamentally, there were these are professional facilitators, trainers, coaches. So they may have different priorities to you guys, and I'm going to talk in those coming slides much more about what's important to participants. But to the actual facilitators, there were 4 big issues: sensing the energy in the room, getting interaction between the participants and with the participants, movement and space activities, and the 4th one beginning with O, which has gone out of my head.
Oh dear.
I love that. But it will come back to me. But sensing the energy in the room was by far the biggest issue. And I was talking to the people about how do you, when it's in the room, how do you sense the energy in the room? And some people did it by getting people into small groups and just hearing the buzz in the room. I mean, that's how I have usually done it when I'm in person. Lots of people noticed eye contact and felt really deprived of eye contact when they were working, even over video, remotely. But this one guy, he was doing some complicated psychodrama thing that I didn't really understand, but he said, when I'm sensing the energy in the room, I said, how do you sense it? He says, I smell it. And I thought that was a metaphor at first. I said, what kind of smell it? He said, well, when I smell it, it's just that little hint. What kind of hint? And he started talking about this hint that he could smell. And he was absolutely clear that what he did was smell the energy in the room. And right now we don't have smell-o-vision.
Yeah,
so
we couldn't help him, could we?
I couldn't help him on that specific one. So there are still issues. And predominantly they're issues around disengagement. I've remembered the O. The O is observation. So the inability to observe the small groups. So energy in the room, interaction between the participants, movement in space, and observing the small groups. So people disengage for 3 reasons we discovered as we went through these interviews. The first one being distraction. It appears that the danger of distraction is significantly higher when people are remote than when they're in the room. Now, here in the room, I can see some devices being used. And it may be, particularly the guys at the back are just doing their email. It's a thing. People do that at conferences. But mostly when you're in a relatively small meeting, people aren't hacking away at their emails, they are actually engaging in the conversation. When we're online, we've got our whole screen in front of us, notifications popping up all over the place, and we're in the same physical location where we're used to doing our work. Hence, distractions become more than usual. Second one.
Other way.
Is discomfort. It can actually be quite uncomfortable to continue to engage in a remote meeting. Quite a lot of people like to do their best thinking by standing up and pacing up and down. And when you force them to sit in front of a laptop and peer into the camera,
With their forehead.
it hurts their neck and it prevents them from doing their best thinking. We are not brains in jars. Human beings think using our whole bodies, and we think in relation to our environment. So if we artificially restrict our environment by forcing ourselves to sit and look into a laptop, we're not going to think as well, and we're probably not going to communicate as well. And the third issue is disconnection. Yes, of course, there is the technological disconnection. You know, if the internet breaks down, it's all going to go to pot. And of course, you must have a technological plan B. Make sure you've got people's phone numbers. Make sure you know you can contact people, even when, as happened to somebody I know, a mechanical digger slices through the internet cable right outside your house, just at the beginning of that crucial client call. Yes, there's physical disconnection, but it seems that disconnection on a metaphorical level is more likely when people are remote. That, we don't necessarily know each other, and unless we've put the effort in to build the relationships, the raw material isn't there for making instant connection. The fact is that because we're all in one physical location together, I can make certain assumptions about you. I know you know where Malmo is. You're part of this conference, so I'm going to assume you've got something to do with the software development industry, and so on and so forth. When we're remote, you can get a much, much more diverse group of people on a call together, but you can't make the same assumptions, so you can feel a bit disconnected. And the truth is that these are probably more problematic when remote than when we're in the room, though not necessarily so.
And I think that's got a lot to do with this low tariff of entry to a remote meeting. I can, if I'm still walking back from the school, it's fine. I'll just dial in on the phone and do it while I'm walking. I can do my mail while it's going on, and the expectations can be set low, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But anyway, with all of that, maybe why you came in the first place.
So this was one of our promised takeaways, how to host remote meetings that rock. Our contention is that actually, if you do some of the things that make a meeting great in the room, you'll actually have a great remote meeting too. So great meetings in the room and great remote meetings achieve their purpose in the shortest possible time. We don't bang on for the sake of it. We know what the purpose is. We know what the purpose is for everybody in the room. If you're not learning or contributing or having fun, why are you there? We know what the purpose is, and we set out and we achieve it in the shortest possible time. And great meetings engage all the participants. Everyone's involved. There are real conversations. Now, the truth is that very large meetings typically are not very engaging. For reasons that are lost in the mists of technological history, people have come to expect that online meetings can involve huge numbers of people. When they do, they're typically not very good. The numbers need to work out so that you can have real conversations, so that you can actually talk to another human being close up. Now, using Zoom and using various other technologies, you can have real conversations in breakout groups. So when I was doing the big conference the other weekend, we used breakout rooms extensively. If we had 30 people in a Zoom call, we would quickly break out into 2s, 3s, 4s to have the real conversations and then come back together. And, of course, we made sure we used movement. We would get people to stand up and move away from the computer periodically. For example, during the small group conversations, we'd suggest actively, look, why don't you, while we do this one, stand up to talk and see how that is for you. So, and of course, you can just put a 2-minute break in. Just as you could in an in-the-room meeting, you can say, actually, we've all been sitting and talking for 20 minutes. Let's stand up and move. Actually, we've all been sitting in here for... Why don't we just all stand up for a moment and give it a bit of a wiggle? Yay! Thank you. Do sit down. But
If you want to, stay standing up if you want to. I got a bad back. I don't like sitting down all the time. It just makes me unhappy.
that tiny stretch break will have changed the way you are thinking.
And every now and again, just look up. Remember I said earlier about, I feel as though you're talking down to me. This is not good physiology for thinking. So, embody. Right, here's the thought, here's the thing. Who's heard of liberating structures? Okay, Lisette, of course. A couple of guys. So, liberating structures. If you're into running meetings, you might not be, but if you're into running meetings and stuff, liberatingstructures.com, just go and look at it. 36 tools for, 32 tools for running more interesting, active meetings. We're going to do one now because, well, the way we think about it, it's like, you're here because we've all had to be at meetings, online meetings that suck. And when you've been there, what would you like to have happen? And we've got some ideas, but we've also reckoned we've got somewhere between 80 and 90 people in the room who've got some ideas too. We're going to use a liberating structure to demonstrate what we do. In the privacy of your own mind, please, all of you now, answer this question. What can you do? What needs to happen to have great meetings remotely? Think about that, and then I'll take you through this process. About 30 seconds. Isn't quiet good? Sometimes when you want to think. Okay, now, in pairs, please, you've thought of something. Have a conversation with anybody. Be curious about what they think and notice the differences between you. And have a quick chat.
Just get a drink of water.
Okay, 10 minutes to go. 10 minutes to go.
Should we do the fourth? Yeah.
Down. Okay. Do you know this one? Thank you. I feel like I'm rushing you, but I'm going to anyway.
That's because you are.
Pairs now, groups of 4. It's called 1, 2, 4 all. See if you can figure out why. Into groups of 4. Be curious and notice the differences. Build these ideas. Hmm? Oh yeah, yeah. It sounds like quite a lot of conversations going on there. Let's start hearing some of the wisdom from the floor. So you've now been part of this meeting. We have not only said some stuff, but you've moved around a bit, you've engaged, you've met people. We could have done this remotely. We do this remotely. Judy's certainly run unconferences that have lasted for 14 hours and people have stayed the whole day. It can be gripping and engaging. Lisette, you've got the microphone. Who's got something about making it work? Thank you.
We had a lot of points, but the main thing was an agenda and having a conclusion to the meeting, and also how to ask for the word. I want to contribute. How do I contribute now, as opposed to in the next waiting 5 speakers and then hearing everyone else, and then you're lost in your thoughts.
And do you think that's a remote meeting specific, or
yeah,
meetings?
For me, I've never been to a live meeting where that was a problem.
Yeah.
But I've been to almost every meeting remotely. For me, has been someone wanted to speak, they didn't get to speak.
Okay. So, what needs to happen for that to happen?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Make sure all the voices in the room are heard is what I would. I think my interpretation of what you say is that people who should speak are not being able to speak.
It's also when we have an agenda with 10 points, they wanted to speak on point number 1.
Yeah.
And the speaker is on point number 3 already, because...
Yeah. So we need meetings that are purposeful, and people get to speak, and all the people at the meeting who need to speak get to speak. Absolutely.
So we might also be thinking about running some groupthink anti-patterns here, some techniques about making sure that perhaps leaders speak last, that everybody comes with a purpose, everybody says something at the beginning, because when everybody says something at the beginning, they're more likely to say something throughout the meeting. So we can make these anti-patterns part of the process as well and structure in advance. I don't know how true it is anymore, but in terms of everybody speaking, what research has shown is that if a woman speaks at the very beginning, other women in the group are more likely to contribute through the course of the meeting. I don't know how true that is, and it will vary according to business and culture, but it's just something you might say, is that true for us?
Let's quickly hear from another couple of people as we run out of time. Who's got something else from those conversations that could do with sharing? Ben?
Yeah, I think building on from the gentleman there was saying that the first thing is you need readiness for the meeting. So sending out an agenda is not only getting people ready for the meeting, but you kind of getting the people that need to be in the meeting there. So first of all, so you get the numbers down. And as you said, have all voices heard. So we talked about having a check-in. So we actually check in with why are we here, what do we want from the meeting, and then continually have spaces for people to talk so you can hear all voices.
Awesome. Check in at the beginning.
And the question, who's different from that, you can bring up in the meeting as well, because this collapsing in can happen even more when people feel disconnected, this groupthink thing. So who's different from that is a great question. And who's different from that?
And who's got something different to say?
One way to get people engaged is to use polls and annotation and other tools that you usually have in remote meeting tools like WebEx or Skype. So you try to put some effort into learning the tools so you can use, not just share your screen and present the PowerPoint, but use the other tools that you have at hand.
Absolutely. There's some awesome tools out there that can be used. They take a bit of effort to get the hang of, but once you have the hang of them, they're great. And one more person who's got something else to say? In which case, let's press on. So our contention around remote meetings is that actually we can make remote meetings great, that fundamentally making them great starts with your attitude. If you believe that they can be great, you think that they're worth putting the effort into, that's the starting point, which will change what you say about remote meetings. It will change how you engage with them. It will change what you do in terms of inviting people, in terms of running meetings, and in your participation in remote meetings. When you believe remote meetings are going to be good, you don't dial in from the bus without a headset. And all of that can start a virtuous cycle where the great processes we have for our meetings feed into a great culture where great remote meetings are just what we do.
I'm reminded of a training saying in my training club, don't be shit.
So, as we bring this to a close, how will you, this is a rhetorical question because we're running down the clock, but how will you use something that we or you have talked about and learned during this session? Now would be a good time to make a note in your program. Something that you will use as a result of this session. Steve and I are Rees McCann. As Lisette mentioned earlier, we do training in this kind of thing. I also do facilitation of remote events all over the world, and I love it. And I'm on a mission to make remote meetings less shit. We don't have to put up with this. If I can enlist you, #remote facilitation is the best I can come up with so far. But what about remote meetings less shit? Would that do? #remote meetings less shit.
Yeah, it's about helping people who work apart work together.
So yes, do keep in touch with us and let us know what happens next. And talk to us during the rest of the conference. We'll be around. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.